Hello, glad you could join me. Today we're going to consider an unfolding internet drama. I don't usually get involved in drama, so it makes for change. The last time was Kraut and Tea, and that saga did not end very well, as some of you may know. If you're not familiar with what happened, you can look it up on the Encyclopedia Dramatica. Today's topic involves two well-known YouTube content creators, King Crocoduck and Essence of Thought. King Crocoduck makes science-related content with an emphasis on physics. He had 77,000 subscribers at the time this video was made. Essence of Thought, on the other hand, focuses on response videos, and his emphasis is on evidence-based humanism. At this time, he has about 31,000 subscribers, some of whom might be described as enthusiastic. If you're a regular viewer and familiar with my channel, you might have noticed that King Crocoduck is on my recommended list and has been since this channel was created. So you might suspect that I'm approaching this controversy from a biased position, and you'd be correct. So let's get that issue out of the way before we go on to the main event. The reason I'm making this video is because I believe that in this matter, King Crocoduck is essentially correct. And Essence of Thought is not only making a seriously flawed argument, but one made in bad faith. And having made more than a few videos that touch on this topic, I have something to say on the issue. King Crocoduck is perfectly capable of defending his own position. I think most of my regular viewers would know that if I disagree with King Crocoduck on any point, then I would say so. In part 1 of my series, T is for Trans, I emphasised that the transgender issue was being distorted by religion and by ideology. By this I meant that when played out in the mainstream, there are two extreme positions. Religion on the right, who discover an intense interest in the biological sciences when it suits them, and the political ideologues on the left, who, while busy deconstructing the sciences, find it convenient to express their ideological position dressed in fashionable scientific terminology. This entire drama encapsulates the concern that I expressed in that statement in almost every respect. While I won't be detailing every heated exchange or Twitter spat, a brief outline will help with the context. A short while back, Essence of Thought was engaged in a series of ill-tempered exchanges with YouTuber Logic. Essence of Thought published a video criticising Logic's position on the matter of trans children. The video was titled, "Logic Rex Charles Theron for Supporting Trans Child." The merits of that video fall outside the scope of this conversation, as does the exchanges between Logic and Essence of Thought. But the impression that I formed was that it couldn't be described as cordial, but we shall set that issue to one side. I only mention it as it is relevant to the later argument between King Crocoduck and Essence of Thought, as it is part of the context. The video we're interested in is the later video titled Exposing Lies Surrounding the Luna Younger Case. Having watched that video, the impression that I had is of someone who was presenting as something of an intellectual warrior, a defender of all things trans. It also seemed to me that in most part, Essence of Thought's reasoning and debating style is lifted directly from the left-wing playbook. Everyone who disagrees with him must of course be a transphobe. If you have the temerity to disagree with his pronouncements on any particular trans issue or topic, then you have to be acting in bad faith, and you need to be labelled as such. After all, Saint Ethel is the virtuous one. He is the guardian of all things trans, and the only explanation for someone disagreeing with him is, of course, that they're transphobic. To give you a flavour of the approach taken by Essence of Thought, we have this at the end of his video, which is directed at Logic.
You do not have the position you seem to believe you do, as is becoming a recurrent theme in the secular community. I mean, what is that? Sam Harris, Rationality Rules, and now Logic? Who's fucking next? Oh, I'll fucking get to your sorry ass next week, and I'm bringing the pancakes since the images I've shown there are completely fucked. To find out how, you'll just have to wait. Though I need to make one thing absolutely clear. I can't just stop talking about the subject. People like Log are breathing life into religious arguments used to dismiss trans experiences. They're uncritically parroting crap that has the capacity to result in further anguish for the trans community. And I'm damn tired of being expected to just take it. More than bigots, I'm getting tired of people demanding I turn a blind eye to problems that impact me. These self-declared peacekeepers tell me that they're trying to calm things down as they outright lie to me about the issue. I'm just done with both the tone policing and the gaslighting. We have a problem. It's time we fucking dealt with it.
Our drama begins with Essence of Thought injecting himself into an ongoing and quite lengthy Twitter conversation between Crocoduck and another Twitter user. That conversation related to the general topic, but was not related to Essence of Thought's ongoing exchanges with Logic. It seems that Essence of Thought, assuming that Crocoduck was defending Logic rather than engaging in a general conversation about the topic, took issue with King Crocoduck over the matter. The Twitter exchanges devolved as one might expect. Accusations made, labels applied, and the Twitter mob appears with burning torches, grimly determined to burn the heretic and protect the honour of Saint Ethel. The debate soon became toxic. The usual labels were applied and the whole issue became so time-consuming and ill-natured that King Crocoduck closed his Twitter account, in response to which Essence of Thought, rather than pause for reflection on the entire series of events, an action that might be consistent with a humanist philosophy. No, rather than that, he accuses Crocoduck of deleting the evidence of his crimes, which is a rather odd accusation when you consider that Essence of Thought had no problem in deleting a long and well-reasoned rebuttal made by King Crocoduck, which was posted below the video Essence of Thought had made criticising King Crocoduck's arguments, which, at least to the casual observer, does not look particularly honest or charitable, does it? After all, if you're confident in your position, if you have the evidence, why not simply decimate his points? Why resort to deletion? Not to worry, the internet does not forget, and I will post a link to the rebuttal in the description box below. We shall go through the points made, and where I think necessary, I'll expand on certain issues. First, the deletion of King Crocoduck's Twitter account. It is explained thus. My exodus to this site, away from Twitter, was motivated by the failure of the latter to facilitate quality discourse. The straw that broke the camel's back involved a dispute over gender dysphoria in children, which the YouTuber Essence of Thought proceeded to make a dishonest video about. Crocoduck then goes on to mention the deletion of his rebuttal, and I quote, I offered the following rebuttal in the comment section, which you can go to by following the link above. Update. Essence of Thought, having his dishonesty matched by his cowardice, has made my comments unavailable for your viewing pleasure. Now, the rebuttal, whether you agree with the points made or not, were well considered and included relevant citations. In fact, it was probably better referenced than most of my videos. If someone makes the effort and takes the time to engage with your arguments, and you simply delete it to prevent your subscribers from reading it, what conclusion are people going to come to, other than intellectual dishonesty? The rebuttal was quite lengthy, so King Crocoduck broke it into 4 sections. 1. The actual dispute. 2. The Luna case and its place in the discussion. 3. Puberty blockers. 4. Wikipedia and my leaving Twitter. In relation to point 1, Crocoduck said the following. 1. The actual dispute. At no point did I ever jump in to defend Logic's honour. This event is a figment of your imagination. You entered into a conversation that I had been having with someone else on the appropriateness of issuing puberty blockers to children, which was the topic that supplied the bulk of the discussion. You were the one who stumbled into that discussion, and its context seems to have eluded you. I'm sure that somewhere in cyberspace the conversation still exists, but I can see no advantage for King Crocoduck in misrepresenting the situation, so I'm inclined to believe that this is exactly what happened. King Crocoduck referenced the Luna case while making his point in the Twitter exchange. Now this is a complex legal case. It's been in the press. It relates to a boy in Texas whose parents are divorced, and now the mother has engaged a gender therapist and counsellors with a view of transitioning the boy to a girl, something the father is strongly opposed to. It's an emotive topic, one that is open to exploitation by both sides of the divide, and that, I'm afraid, includes Essence of Thought himself, who cannot be described as unbiased in these issues, and has engaged in a bit of selective reporting on the matter, something I will cover in a later video. At this point, I think it more important for King Crocoduck's voice to be heard. The problem with using individual cases to make general points is that you soon get bogged down in technicalities. The technical issues often obfuscate the realities. For example, Essence of Thought made a claim in his video that puberty blocking was only an option in this case, which benefits from being true, but at the same time not entirely accurate, because he would have been fully aware that the gender therapist and counsellor were following the Dutch protocol, and that the mother had already engaged the Genesis clinic. So while puberty blockers are an option, it is one that they probably intend to use. But in all fairness, Crocoduck had only referenced the case to make a point. He was not arguing the Luna case itself. In his rebuttal, he stated the following, and I quote, "The Luna case was briefly brought up in this conversation when I offered evidence that children with gender dysphoria are undergoing medical intervention to treat their condition. As it currently stands, I am happy to acknowledge that the details of the case had eluded me at the time of that discussion. I don't have any problems retracting my comments about the Luna case." So it seems as if Crocoduck was quite willing to admit or correct any factual errors that he might have made in relation to that case. In a later paragraph, he states the following, and I quote, "This fact, combined with the fact that the Luna case was mentioned once in a set of exchanges consisting of hundreds of tweets, yet it supplied the bulk of your video, makes it unclear as to why you're using it to represent a long and complex dispute that made almost no reference to it. My impression here is that Essence of Thought has grasped an incidental reference to a complex case and is exploiting it to the full in order to cast doubt about the credibility of Crocoduck in the minds of his intended audience. He must have been aware that the reference was incidental to the argument made in that series of tweets. I shall leave it to you to decide if this is intellectually honest or not. Crocoduck goes on to make the argument that Essence of Thought's position that puberty blockers have no long-term effect is not an accurate reflection of the situation, and indeed it is not. The effects of puberty blocking in cases of precocious puberty in children is well documented, but, and I have to emphasize the but, this is only delaying puberty until normal development can be resumed. There is very little research on delaying puberty beyond this point. That is the simple fact of the matter. What evidence we do have suggests that there may be issues, some of which Crocoduck referenced and provided citations for. He stated halfway through this section, and I quote, "Puberty blockers are reversible is not synonymous with puberty blockers have no lasting effect. The problem is, Essence of Thought wants to maintain purity. He does not want his narrative tainted with inconvenient and confusing uncertainties. These, it seems, are best left to one side. We don't want to frighten the children now, do we?" Compare Essence of Thought leading his followers down the primrose path to the more considered opinion offered by Crocoduck when he states, and I quote, "To briefly summarize, the application of puberty blockers in this context is a new approach in need of further study and requires caution with respect to its application, especially where kids are involved." Does this sound like an extreme position? Is that in any way transphobic? It seems to me simply an expression of concern. But of course, we all know that compassion and concern are the monopolies of the left. Now, before we finish, I would like us to take a look at several points expanded on by King Crocoduck in his rebuttal. These points are all referenced and links provided to the relevant journals and papers. The first relates to puberty blockers and is the bulk of section 3 of his rebuttal. King Crocoduck states the following, and I quote, "When one speaks of puberty blockers being fully reversible, one is referencing exclusively to the fact that when these blockers, which inhibit the release of sex hormones from the pituitary gland, are no longer taken, those inhibitors no longer prevent the release of sex hormones, thus allowing pubescent development to resume. What is not reversible are the effects downstream of this process, most notably adverse effects to bone mineralization and compromised fertility. There is a reason why the FDA did not give approval to the use of puberty blockers for patients who present with GD. The fact that you're prepared to brush these issues under the rug and pretend there are known potential lasting effects to puberty blockers speaks to your dishonesty on this topic. Another important point he raised was in relation to ethics, a topic that's often overlooked in the general conversation for some reason. In relation to ethics, he had this to say. At this stage of the dispute, people responded that any medical procedure carries a risk, and that clinicians have a duty to go over said risks with patients. What you and your pals on Twitter consistently neglected to consider was the bioethics of informed consent in children, particularly those undergoing a tumultuous gender crisis, and most of whom end up growing out of it. And this is without going into the unknowns, particularly where the long-term effects of arresting neurophysiological development in children are concerned. The research in the area is extremely limited, and it does not do to use children as guinea pigs, which is why I made the comparison to John Money in the first place. To briefly summarise, the application of puberty blockers in this context is a new approach in need of further study, and requires caution with respect to its application, especially where kids are involved. You and your cronies, however, seem perfectly content with throwing caution to the winds and misleading people as to the long-term effects of these interventions, and neglect any complexity involving the bioethics of informed consent in children presenting with symptoms of GD. Well, we come to the end of this particular adventure. You already know on which side of this issue I stand on. I shall leave it to you to make up your own minds on the matter. But I'll ask a simple question. Having seen the main points made by King Crocoduck in his rebuttal, can you think of any reason why Essence of Thought might not want his subscriber base to be exposed to it? We end our adventure at this point. I hope you found something of interest in this video. If you would like to support my channel, I now have a Subscribestar page. If you're unable to support my work through Subscribestar, you can share, like or comment. It's all good. Thank you for watching.